The brakes aren't working, the school bus driver shouted as the vehicle lost control on the mountain road. There were 30 children on the bus, and a sharp curve ahead. At that moment, the substitute teacher sitting in the back row stood up and said calmly, "Children, everyone stay in your seats. From which city in the world are you watching this story today? If stories like this move you, consider subscribing to Unseen Legends for more tales of quiet heroes walking among us." Pine Ridge Elementary's yellow bus was traveling its usual route that Tuesday morning. Driver Bob Martinez had been transporting children on the same mountain road for 15 years. At 52, he was an experienced and careful driver, but that morning, something was different. There were 30 students on the bus, ranging in age from 6 to 12. In the back rows sat Sarah Chen quietly. At 45, with a doctorate in mathematics from Auburn University, Sarah was substituting for Mrs. Wilson, who was sick that week. The children just called her Miss Sarah, and no one knew her real background. The mountain road was the only route connecting Pine Ridge Town to the school in the valley. The 15-kilometer road was full of sharp curves and steep slopes. Every morning hundreds of children passed this way, but this morning everything would change. Sarah was observing the children on the bus. In the front seat sat 6-year-old Emma Johnson, riding the school bus for the first time. In the middle were 8-year-old twins Jake and Jordan, and in the back rows were the older 12-year-olds. It was a normal school morning. Driver Bob was beginning to notice that the steering felt stiff. The brake pedal also felt different, as if resistance had decreased. As an experienced driver, he sensed these changes, but they weren't at an alarming level yet. Miss Sarah, 7-year-old Katie Lopez turned around. "Do we have a math test today?" Sarah smiled. "No, Katie. Today we'll just do fun activities." At that moment, the bus was approaching the most dangerous section of the mountain road, known as Devil's Curve. This section was a sharp 90-degree turn to the right with a 200-meter cliff on the right side. There had never been an accident for years, but that morning everything would change. Bob pressed the brake pedal. The pedal went all the way to the floor, but the bus didn't slow down. "What?" Bob tried the pedal again in confusion. Nothing. The brakes had completely failed. The bus was accelerating toward Devil's Curve. The speedometer passed 55 mph and continued rising. They couldn't make the turn at such speed. "The brakes aren't working." Bob panicked. He gripped the steering wheel tighter, but the laws of physics were working against them. When the children heard the driver's panicked voice, they began to worry. Little Emma started crying. The twins hugged each other. The older children tried to understand what was happening. Sarah instantly assessed the situation: the bus's speed, the proximity of the curve, the children's safety. She began making calculations in her head: momentum, friction coefficient, curve radius, safe stopping distance. Driver Bob gripped the steering wheel tighter in desperation. "What am I going to do? What am I going to do?" Sarah stood up. Her movement was calm and determined. "Bob, don't shout at the children. Don't create panic." "But there are no brakes. We can't make the turn. We're going to die." Sarah walked forward. Her steps were experienced and confident. "Children, everyone stay in your seats," she said calmly but loud enough. "We're doing a seatbelt check." The bus was 300 meters from Devil's Curve. Speed had risen to 60 mph. "Bob, give me the steering wheel," Sarah commanded. "You're a teacher. I'm the driver. Bob, trust me. Give me the steering wheel." The authority in Sarah's voice surprised Bob. This wasn't the voice of a panicked substitute teacher. This was the voice of someone accustomed to giving commands. 200 meters left. Sarah took over at the steering wheel. When her hands gripped the steering wheel, a different energy was immediately felt. These were hands that had held a steering wheel for thousands of hours. "Children, now we're going to play a game," Sarah announced loudly. "Everyone will sit in their seats and check their seatbelts. Whoever has the tightest seatbelt wins." Despite their fears, the children focused on the game. While Sarah distracted them, she was implementing her own plan. 50 meters. Sarah quickly analyzed the bus's dynamics. 30,000 pounds weight, 60 mph speed, downhill acceleration. She couldn't make the turn with a vehicle without brakes, but she had other options. Engine braking. Sarah found the gear shift and began carefully downshifting. The automatic transmission resisted, but Sarah persisted. Engine braking engaged, and the bus began to slow slightly. 120 meters. It was still too fast. Sarah scanned the environment. There was a guardrail on the inside of the curve, a cliff on the outside. But on the left side, just before the curve, she noticed a slightly upward sloping dirt strip. 90 meters. "Jake and Jordan," Sarah called to the twins. "Tell your friends. Everyone hold the emergency supplies under their seats." The twins relayed the instructions. The children followed the orders, thinking it was a game. 60 meters. Sarah made her final decision. Trying to make the turn would be suicide, but she could use the dirt strip on the left as a ramp. There was risk, but she had to do it for the lives of 30 children. 30 meters. Sarah sharply turned the steering wheel left. The bus left the asphalt and went up the dirt ramp. The vehicle lifted into the air, stayed airborne for 2 seconds, then landed heavily. The children screamed, but Sarah was in control. After the bus hit the dirt ground, it began to slow down thanks to the slope. Sarah straightened the steering wheel and managed to bring the bus to a controlled stop. Silence. Then the children's joyful screams began. Do it again, do it again. Sarah pulled her hands from the steering wheel. Her body was shaking, but the children were safe. Bob moved to the driver's seat, still in shock. Sarah, how did you do that? Sarah smiled. When you spend 20 years as a professional race car driver, then become a math teacher, you learn such things. You were a race car driver, NASCAR Winston Cup Series for 20 years, 47 victories, 3 championships, but I left that life behind. I preferred teaching children mathematics. Bob still couldn't believe it. Well, why didn't you ever say? Sarah looked at the children. They were all safe. All sound, because the past doesn't matter. What matters is what you do right now. The ambulance and police arrived 20 minutes later. All children were checked. None had serious injuries, just a few scratches and bruises. Sarah Chen's story spread through Pine Ridge town that day. NASCAR legend Sarah "Speed" Chen had left her racing career at its peak to become a math teacher. No one knew why, until a child on the bus asked that day, "Miss Sarah, why did you stop racing?" Sarah smiled slightly, because the greatest victory isn't crossing the finish line, it's getting 30 children home safely. The next day at Pine Ridge Elementary, Sarah continued her normal classes. The children now looked at her with different eyes, but she was still the same patient, loving teacher. The school principal offered Sarah a permanent position. Sarah accepted. She was no longer a substitute, but a full-time teacher. Bob Martinez sent his bus for repairs and learned that the brakes had malfunctioned. If Sarah hadn't been there, he would have died with 30 children that day. Sometimes, Bob told his wife that evening, angels come in the form of race car drivers. Sometimes the most extraordinary people do the most ordinary jobs. They are heroes who teach children mathematics, patiently answer questions, serve quietly, but save lives when needed. Sarah Chen lived with a passion for speed for 20 years. But she found real meaning when she saved the lives of 30 children in that critical moment. Have you ever had someone you knew as ordinary turn out to have an extraordinary past? Share it with us in the comments. And if stories like this move you, subscribe to Unseen Legends to hear stories of quiet heroes living among us. Because the next time you see someone quietly teaching lessons, you might be looking at a former NASCAR champion. This story is a work of fiction created to honor the spirit of service and sacrifice. Any resemblance to actual persons or events is purely coincidental.